Good evening, everyone. Today is our 67 Monday Sutta discussion. Tonight's talk is going to be very interesting, and it is about Vipassana. And I have given the topic to be how to practice Vipassana inside. One of the meanings of Vipassana is the most popular meaning of Vipassana is insight in 5 minutes, according to Cakkhu Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 18.1. Of course, one can practice Vipassana in less than 5 minutes if you know the proper way how to do it. But the understanding, and you have to learn how to do it, and then you have to understand it, and then you have to apply to all the situations, and that would take you time. That practice would take time for you to get familiar with. So before I move on to tonight's topic, how to practice Vipassana in 5 minutes, I wanna go over with some information about Vipassana. I wanna give you an overview about this word Vipassana and how it has been developed, and what is seen in the larger, broader context of the spiritual world with the word called Vipassana. So basically, Vipassana means insight or clear seeing. Okay, so I want to tell you that you hardly see, if you really read the Theravada Pali textual books, you hardly see the word called Vipassana. So that's why we really want to study this word and the related practice, how it is mentioned, why this word called, this concept Vipassana has been a very big concept at a time that it was not mentioned that much in the Theravada Pali text. But there are some places where we see that the word Vipassana, but it's very, relatively very low in terms of the number that we see in other works, especially the post-canonical works. Vipassana, as I said earlier, basically we could say insight or clear seeing. That's the bigger meaning of this particular word. And we could see there are a couple English verbs that we could see in translating of this word called Vipassana: seeing into something, seeing true, seeing in a special way. Also, we know there is a synonymous word called Paccakka. Paccakka, in Sanskrit we know Paccakka means pratyaksha, before the eyes. So that means, when you are using your direct experiential perception as opposite to reasoning or argument about any situation in your life, there you have Vipassana. So when you are, pretty much, precisely and then clearly look into something with the situation, and then you are, literally technically using Vipassana. So the purpose of Vipassana is to gain Panya. So the objective of Vipassana is Panya. So Panya is the bigger meaning of the Buddhist spiritual journey. Okay, so your spiritual journey should move you towards Panya, and Vipassana helps you to attain Panya. So in other words, I would sum up this way: insight into the true nature of reality. That is called Vipassana. So if you can take a look at the history of this word called Vipassana, we see that in the 10th century, Theravada tradition, which started from Stagravadins, branch, which then developed into this bigger Theravada tradition in Sri Lanka and in all these Theravada countries. We see that this Theravada tradition seems to have ended the Vipassana practice in the 10th century, according to scholarly work. And there are reasons why they ended, as a major practice. It's due to the belief that Buddhism has, degenerated, and the liberation was no longer attainable until the coming Buddha, called Maitreya. So basically, they were thoughtful about the liberation, and liberation is not possible without a future Buddha, so that they sort of degenerated this practice called Vipassana. Although it was ended in a popular way among the practices of the Theravadins, we can see it was again reintroduced in Burma in the 18th century, especially based on the contemporary readings of the Satipatthana Sutta, and also some of the commentarial works like Visuddhimagga and some other texts. And there were leading pioneers who reinvented Vipassana practice in a different way in Burma. As you can see, there are a couple people who helped this, develop as a living practice. Medavi, Lady Sayadaw, U. Vimala, Mahasi Shadu, and also recently S.N. Goenkan. All these people who helped, who reinvented this practice from a Satipatthana basis in Burma. But you should keep in mind that the Theravadins, basically they sort of left this practice, left out this practice in the 10th century, because they were sort of hopeful about the future Buddha. That's why they kind of didn't pay that much attention to Vipassana practice at that time. Now you can see that Samatha and Vipassana, there's a division, and we always get to see Samatha has been so much encouraged, and we will be discussing this Samatha Vipassana division, and how that's how it was. The term called Vipassana is been mentioned in the canon, in the Pali text, with Samatha. Even it's very hard to see in many places. So anyways, what we can see is that Theravada tradition, they sort of like left out this Vipassana practice in the 10th century, and it was reinvented in Burma in the 18th century. So now, if you can take a look at the Theravadins' understanding, especially the scholars and monastics nowadays, whether it is a combination or disjunction in terms of Samatha and Vipassana, it is still a matter of dispute. It's still in debate. Some people suggest, some Theravadins suggest Samatha and Vipassana go together. Some suggest Samatha is a different practice. Samatha is the main practice. Some say it's the Vipassana, the main practice, like the modern contemporary scholars. So anyways, what I want to tell you is that Pali Suttas hardly mention Vipassana, especially Vipassana the word called Vipassana. But if you can take a look at the Vipassana movement that was reinvented, as I said to you, that Vipassana practice was sort of like degenerated in 10th century, and it was reinvented by the Burmese monks and scholars. The people who reinvented Vipassana practice sort of emphasize Vipassana practice over Samatha. So then it's a kind of a place where then general public started thinking that Vipassana could be a better practice than Samatha. But the critiques, scholars who are reading far and wide and alpha to omega and ABC of all that, they still in the thought that these are two necessary elements of the spiritual journey of anybody. So you can you can sort of you know sort of say that this practice, one practice is better than the other practice, or vice versa. So the both practices help. But still, we haven't gone into the suttas to see those few suttas. We don't see a lot of suttas that talk about vipassana. We can, sort of get an idea about what the Buddha really, held in his understanding about this word. So where we can see that there are three main suttas where we can see the word vipassana, the vipassana practice has been mentioned in the Pali teachings. One of the suttas is King Sukhopama Sutta. King Sukhopama Sutta is Samyutta Nikaya 35, Samyutta, and 245, 35.245. In this sutta, Buddha provides an elaborate metaphor in which serenity, which means samatha, and insight, vipassana, are the swift pair of messengers who deliver the message of Nibbana via the Noble Eightfold Path. So that means samatha and vipassana, they both seem to be swift pair of messengers, so who deliver the message of the Nibbana via the Noble Eightfold Path. So looks like that these two, they really lead one to attain Nibbana, although it was metaphorically given. The second sutta, we can see some understandings about vipassana and samatha and vipassana context is Yuganadha Sutta. Yuganadha Sutta is mentioned in Anguttara Nikaya, Chatukka Nipata 170, 4.170. In this sutta, we understand that, I hope that Venerable Ananda recited this sutta. But anyways, in this sutta we understand that how do many people who complete their spiritual journey by attaining Nibbana go through or handle samatha and vipassana. So samatha and vipassana, these two practices affecting everybody, almost everybody. So nobody can attain Nibbana without samatha or without vipassana practices. So in this sutta called Yuganadha Sutta, we know that people attain Arahanthood, Nibbana, using samatha and vipassana in one of the three ways. Let's take a look at how these ways are mentioned. The first group is called samatha pubbangama vipassana. So that means those who attain Nibbana, they develop samatha and then vipassana. So their first entry point is samatha, and then they are heading towards vipassana. Second group, vipassana pubbangama samatha. So this second group, they develop vipassana first, and then they are heading to samatha. So if vipassana is the final goal, then why then people, those who develop vipassana, reaching towards, moving towards samatha? Something to think about. So the second group, they develop vipassana. They start from vipassana and they are then going towards samatha. The third group, samatha vipassana yuganadham. So the sutta name itself says yuganadha. Samatha vipassana yuganadham. So this third group, their approach is they develop samatha and vipassana in tandem at the same time. Now, a lot of people might not know what is samatha and what is vipassana in clear terms. Samatha basically means calming your mind. Or I would say developing your mind. It's just that. How can you do that? By calming your pancha nivaranas or avaranas. So how can you practice samatha is by calming your 5 hindrances. What are they? Kamachanda, sensual pleasures, Vyapada, ill will, Tinamidda, sloth and torpor, Uddacha Kukkucha, restlessness of your mind, and then Uddacha is remorse or regret. Vicikiccha is doubts. So we all struggle with these 5 hindrances, or we call Pancha Nivarana or Pancha Avarana, all the time. So if we can calm them down, then that means we practice samatha. We can practice samatha to calm them down. Or if you think that you are good at calming down those 5, that means you are already with samatha. Vipassana is, now, although you can calm down 5 hindrances, Pancha Nivarana or Avarana, but if you do not, but that does not guarantee that you are heading towards Nibbana. That's why you have to additionally practice Vipassana in order to attain Nibbana. So the people who want to have a full, complete elimination of defilements, they start, some people they start from Samatha, and then they are practicing Vipassana. Some people start from Vipassana first, and then they are heading towards Samatha. Some people they start Samatha Vipassana together. So we have something to think about. That means everyone has their own way of practicing Samatha and Vipassana, and there is no one way to say that I want to start, everybody should start from Samatha or everybody should start from Vipassana. That's completely false. So you can practice, if you think that you are good enough in practicing Vipassana first, go ahead, that doesn't matter. But if you think you wanna practice Samatha Vipassana together because your mind is not calmed down, and then you need to do the other part called Vipassana, then you have to develop the both Samatha Vipassana together. But if you think that your mind is already sort of calmed down, then you can start from Vipassana, and then you can slowly develop Samatha in a sort of full-fledged way later. So it doesn't matter. So the most important thing is one has to practice these both, regardless of whether you start from Samatha or Vipassana or the both. So that's the second reference that we talk about. Samatha and Vipassana, especially this word called Vipassana in this context. So for instance, now we talk about the last category of people who develop Samatha and Vipassana together. For instance, obtaining the first jhana. Now people might get stuck in understanding what is developing Samatha and Vipassana together. What does that mean? So in short, what I could say is, I would give you an example. For instance, obtaining the first jhana with Samatha, Samatha is about jhanas, right? So there are 4 main jhanas, Patama, Dutiya, Tatiya, Chaturtha. Let's say you develop Samatha first, and that means you are obtaining, let's say, starting from the first jhana. And then what you see before you want to go to Vipassana is that the seeing in the associated aggregates, the 3 marks of existence, tilakkana, before proceeding to the second jhana. Let's say you attain the first jhana with Samatha, and then you're going to see anicca, dukkha, anatta, the nature of anicca, dukkha, anatta in the first jhana. Anicca means impermanence, dukkha means suffering, dissatisfaction, anatta is not self. So you're going to see this universal nature in the first jhana. That means you practice Samatha, also you practice Vipassana, and then you are heading towards the second jhana. After you completed your attaining second jhana, and then you do the same thing. You're looking at the anicca nature, dukkha nature, anatta nature of the second jhana. Once you finish that, you are moving towards the third jhana. Because you can't attain jhanas without Samatha, right? So you want to attain jhanas with Samatha, and then how you're going to move towards the second one, the next one, third, fourth, is by using Vipassana practice. That's the second reference about Vipassana as well as Samatha. But Samatha is widely mentioned, but basically Vipassana is not that mentioned. So this is one of the rare places where we can see Vipassana with Samatha. Third reference is Vijjabhagya Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 2.30. That means in the Dukkha Nipada. What does this sutta say? This sutta is very interesting. This sutta talks about two main important vimuttis, Cheto Vimutti and Panya Vimutti, with Samatha and Vipassana teachings. So, as the sutta name itself means, it's Vijjabhagya. Vijjabhagya means, it's about sharing the knowledge, this important Nibbanic knowledge, Vijja. Dve me bhikkhave Dhamma Vijjabhagya. Katame dve. What does it mean? So, there are two types of sharing of the knowledge. Samatocha Vipassanacha. Samato bhikkhave bhavito katamatta nubhoti. Chittam bhaviti. So, that means, what can someone do by practicing samatha? Chittam bhaviti. Develop the mind. The purpose of practicing samatha is to develop your mind. That's it. Because you develop your mind by calming your sensual 5 hindrances. Pancha nivarana avarana. Then the next question, comes up. The next question is, Chittam bhavitam katamatta nubhoti. So then what happens after someone develops the mind? Yo rago supahiyati. That means, when the mind is developed, passion or raga is abandoned. So that's the benefit. So when you develop your mind, you are in a better place to handle your raga or passion. Okay. Vipassana bhikkhave bhavito katamatta nubhoti. So, what happens when someone practices Vipassana? That means, I think I couldn't share that much about Vipassana. Vipassana basically means insight, and it helps you to become wise. That means attain, Nibbana with Panya. Basically, it means that you are trying to practice Anicca Dukkha Anatta, understanding into any situation, phenomenon. So then basically Vipassana, so what is the purpose of Vipassana? Panya bhaviyati. That means when the insight is developed, Vipassana is developed, then discernment is developed. That means Panya is developed, right? So the main purpose of Vipassana is to develop Panya, or discernment or wisdom. Panya bhavita katamatta nubhoti. So what is the purpose of Panya? What happens when someone practices Panya? Ya avijja sa pahiyati. There is ignorance about samsara, right? So then when someone practices Vipassana, I would go back to the beginning. When someone practices samatha, then what happens? That person develops the mind. When someone develops the mind, that helps that person to eliminate, at least to temporarily withhold raga. When someone abandons, raga or a passion, then what happens? That person can practice Vipassana easily. And then when that person practices Vipassana or insight, then that helps that particular person to attain the wisdom. When someone practices, that person practices wisdom, then that helps that person to, eliminate avijja, ignorance of the samsara. And then it further says, Ragu pakkilittang va bhikkhave chittang na vimucchati. Avijju pakkilittang va panyana bhaviyati. Itiko bhikkhave raga viraga cheto vimutti. Avijja viraga panyanoti. So when someone abandons raga, passion, then that means the mind release. So one's mind is released. When someone abandons avijja, ignorance, then that means it's called wisdom release. I would once again translate this way. Defiled by passion, the mind is not released. Defiled by ignorance, panya does not develop. Thus, from the fading of passion or raga is there awareness release or mind release. From the fading of ignorance is there discernment release or panya vimukti. So, in this context, we understand that vipassana helps someone to attain wisdom. So that's very interesting because we all need wisdom. And if you can remember that I and Professor Karyavasam had a discussion about panya, we talked about 3 types of panya. Suttame panya, chintame panya, and bhavaname panya. Suttame panya simply means that you learn Dhamma from a person, a monk, a nun, or from books on internet. And chintame panya means that you are getting this kind of panya, chintame panya, by reasoning out, by rationalizing what's going on. But bhavaname panya means that you are using anicca, you are looking at anicca, dukkha, anatta nature of any situation, good or bad. So in short, I would say that looking at any situation or phenomenon through anicca, dukkha, anatta is vipassana practice, and that takes you to nibbana, or bhavaname panya, that takes you to nibbana. So that means basically insight practice means that whenever you are able to look at any situation from anicca, dukkha, anatta, that's where you attain wisdom, and that's where you use panya. At the same time, vipassana. Vipassana is the methodology of panya, and then you have to sort of understand that in any situation you need to look at the anicca nature, that means impermanent nature, dukkha nature, dissatisfaction nature, unsatisfactoriness, unsatisfactory nature, and anatta nature means not self nature. So then you use vipassana methodology to attain nibbana, or this highest wisdom. Okay, so with that in mind, I also want to talk about the vipassana meditation, because we haven't seen a meditation with vipassana in the Pali canon, especially the Pali Suttas, but we see the word called vipassana. Then how come this came as a meditation when this was happened? So we have to look at the vipassana movement in the 18th century. As I told you, in the 18th century, there were monks and those scholars who started vipassana as a movement, and their main purpose was to use vipassana as a different meditation. I would basically say they were trying to use sati, samatha, as the supervisors of the practice. So they're asking people to practice sati and samatha, and then practice anapanasati, breathing meditation, so that combining with contemplations of like impermanence, changes, and so that this insight into the true nature of everything. So that's what they explain by vipassana meditation. Basically, they were using breathing meditation as given in the Satipatthana Sutta to practice vipassana. But there are some questions that have arisen because of the new vipassana movements. Now, if you can take a look at of the contemporary vipassana movement, they don't encourage the sila practice, which is a big deal, right? I don't know. I mean, probably the new vipassana movement is very popular in the West, and if I suspect if the so-called teachers and people want to say that sila is a mandatory practice, then I think the mindset of the people in the West is different than the Eastern people, because in the East, what we see is that sila is the starting practice. But if you talk about a very ethical, very virtuous kind of a practice is mandatory before the Vipassana meditation, this could sort of, discourage people. I think this is what the new Vipassana movement people might have thought. But anyways, what we could say is that there is not this sila practice that much, emphasized in the Western Vipassana meditation practice. But I do say we need the sila perspective. We need the practice of sila before we try to understand Vipassana. Because if Buddha is very adamant, very clear in his suttas that sila, samadhi, panya, they are gradual disciplinary stages, then how come someone is to think that we don't want sila, let's just go to Vipassana, because people are going through bad things in their lives so that they can directly use Vipassana into their situations. This could be an easy thing, but the problem is, I don't think if people don't understand the value of sila, that means morality, virtue, they will never be successfully able to practice Vipassana inside. So I do recommend we need sila practice for a better practice of Vipassana, so that we can attain wisdom. So that's one thing to think about. And we also know that there are some basic stages of jhanas in the Vipassana movement, because we know that there are 4 jhanas, first, second, third, fourth jhanas. What happens to the meditator in the first jhana is that the meditator normally thinks that before the jhanic practice, that the body and mind, they are 2 separate things. But once the meditator is into the first jhana, then what happens? This meditator first explores that the body and mind, they are not 2, they are non-dual, and also discovering the 3 characteristics, universal characteristics of the body and mind and everything around and beyond. And then what happens is that the meditator is basically focused on vitakka and vichara, applied and sustained thoughts. So also the meditator, when the meditator taps into three universal characteristics called anicca, dukkha, anatta, into using those 3 into any phenomenon, then what happens is that meditator is easily able to see the real nature of any phenomenon, how they are appearing and how they are ceasing. So that's what happens at the first jhana in the new Vipassana movement, and this is what we see in the jhanic practice in the samatha too. The second is that in the second jhana, what we see is that the practitioner or the meditator, sees that effort is not. So the meditator sees that the practice seems effortless when someone is into anicca, dukkha, anatta and using anicca, dukkha, anatta tilakkana, which you call universal characteristics. When that person keeps going after first jhana, then that particular meditator understand by himself, herself, that this is not a practice that I should be so much, putting effort. So this is kind of an effortless practice, because this is something that I have to sort of, mentalize in the proper way. And then what happens when that person understands that the practice is effortless, then the vitakkas and vicharas that were in the first jhana, they both disappear. That's what happened to the meditator. In the third jhana, what we see is that now up to this point there was piti, what you call, there's a particular better word in Pali. In English, I would say rapture, the joy. Joy too disappears. Because when that person understands there is no more vitakka and vichara, and there is no more effortful practice, and then piti or rapture disappears, and there is only happiness, bliss that person can enjoy. That's what happened. Also concentration, that's what happened at the end of the jhana. So moving on to the fourth jhana, at the end of fourth jhana, then what happens is that a meditator understands that equanimity, which we talked last week, mudita is the most, which you call upekka, upekka is the most interesting thing in terms of looking at any situation, phenomenon with anicca, dukkha, anatta. At the end, what we have to be is that we have to be into upekka to understand everything without attaching, without getting impinged with any situation. And then what happens, even the sukha, called comforts, they also disappear, because every phenomenon happens to be clearly discernible for that particular meditator. And then what happens, she understands that every phenomenon as being unstable, transient, disenchanting, and the desire of freedom will take place. And that's the most interesting thing in his jhanic practice. So now the new Vipassana movement is good, and I see that they have sort of blended Vipassana term, Vipassana practice into samatha, because you attain jhanas with samatha, and then when someone uses Vipassana practice into samatha practice, it looks like it's sort of like coupled with the both. So anyways, that's the new Vipassana movement. I mean, I think it's a good approach, but we have to also be careful in not misinterpreting the basic fundamental teachings of the Buddhist understanding as well. So now let's move on to the sutta for today. As you can see that I have given the topic to be this way, how to practice Vipassana in 5 minutes. As I told you at the beginning, yes, it's possible to practice Vipassana even less than 5 minutes, but you need to know how to practice it. So that's why we're gonna be looking at one particular sutta as well as some subsequent suttas in practicing Vipassana in a short time. So the sutta that we will be looking at is Cakkhu Sutta. That's 18.1 in the Samyutta Nikaya. Let's take a look at the Pali reading. This is this conversation happened between the Buddha and Rahula, Arahant Rahula. Cakkhu Sutta. Evam me sutang ekang samayang bhagava savatyang viharati jetavane anatha pindikas arame. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jetas Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Ataku ayasma Rahulo yena bhagava ten upasankamitva bhagavantang abhivaditva ekamantang nisedi. Ekamantang nisinnoko ayasma Rahulo bhagavantang etadapucha. Sadhu me bhante bhagava sankittena dhamman desetu yamahang bhagavatu dhammang sutva eko vupakatto apamatto atapi pahitatto viharayanti. Now this is what Arahant Rahula informed the Buddha. Then Venerable Rahula went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Sir, may the Buddha please teach me Dhamma in brief. When I have heard it, I will live alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute. So this clearly means that Venerable Rahula was expecting to, go for a solitary place after, learning from the Buddha, something that is good for a solitary life. So he was like sort of narrowing down his expectations to let Buddha know this is what I want. And then the Buddha questions him. Tang kim manyasi Rahula? What do you think, Rahula? Cakkhu niccangva aniccangvati. Rahula, is the eye permanent or impermanent? Is the eye nicca or anicca? Aniccang bhante. Impermanent, sir. Cakkhu is impermanent. Yampana niccang dukkhangva tang sukhangvati. But if it is impermanent, if it is anicca, is it suffering or happiness? Is it dukkha or sukha? Dukkhang bhante. Suffering, sir. Dukkha. Yampana niccang dukkhang viparinama dhammang kallannutang samanupasitum etang mama eso hamasmi eso me attati. Now the third question is, but if it is impermanent, I, suffering and perishable, is it fit to be regarded as this is mine, I am this is myself? No hetam bhante. No, sir. So if the I is impermanent, if the I is suffering, then can I take I to be my, I, me, myself? Whenever Rahul says no, I can't. And then Buddha further goes on to the other senses too. Sotang niccang va aniccang vati, aniccang bhante, and so on and so forth. Ghanang niccang aniccang, juha nicca va anicca va, kayo nicco va anicco vati, mano nicco va anicco vati. So he further goes on to ask, is the ear permanent or impermanent? Is the ear nicca va anicca, impermanent, sir? Is the nose permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. Is the tongue permanent or impermanent? That means jivha, impermanent, sir. Is the body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. Is the mind permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, sir. But if it is impermanent, is it suffering or happiness? Suffering, sir. But if it is impermanent, suffering and perishable, is it fit to be regarded as this is mine, I am this is myself? No, sir. Now, you need to understand, what does Buddha say by the senses are impermanent? Now, what is the vipassana in this sutta? Now, what I'm sharing with you is to be the 5-minute or less than 5-minute vipassana practice is that you need to look at your senses, because senses are the places where you collect the data. Right? So if you look at data, how the process, just keep in mind, let's say you are a computer, you are not AI, but you are kind of a developed version of AI, then you are collecting data from outside, right? Now, mostly, data is not the problem. The problem is your technical nature within you, because you are the one who is taking whatever the necessary, unnecessary, neutral type of data. So the easiest way that you can practice according to this sutta, especially this vipassana, is that if you can understand your eye and the sights, images, ears, sounds, nose, smells, tongue, taste, body, contact, mind, thoughts, to be impermanent in the first place, that's when you practice vipassana. But what unfortunately happens is that you never put this methodology when you barely take the data from outside, when you barely feed yourself with those data coming from outside. This is the problem. So you have to start thinking that whenever you see an image, whenever you hear a sound, whenever you smell something, whenever you taste something, whenever you feel something, whenever you think something, you need to think that what I used to process data from outside. I mean, those things that process outside data that is within you, these senses, they are impermanent. So then what about the things that you process from outside? They are definitely going to be impermanent, right? So that's the most correct version of practicing Vipassana in the first place. That's what this sutta says. And then what will happen? Evan, not even anicca, okay? You have to practice the three characteristics at the same time. Anicca, you need to see anicca nature of your senses, anicca nature of the sense objects, and then dukkha nature of your senses, dukkha nature of the objects, anatta nature of your senses, and then anatta nature of the sense objects, right? If you can take a look at, let's take an example. Let's say I'm seeing you at this time. So my eyes are anicca. I know that they are changing over time. And then things that I see through my eyes, I know definitely they are anicca too. And then what happens after that is that I need to think that if all these are anicca, especially that I'm seeing with my senses, then what happens? If I firmly believe anything in both eyes and the objects, definitely I am, going to go through suffering or dissatisfaction. I would say basically dissatisfaction. And if there is dissatisfaction after impermanent nature, then what I'm going to understand is that it's not self-nature. There is nothing I can call I, me, myself. If I can call my I to be not I, me, myself, then what about the other people's, other objects that are not I, me, myself? Definitely they are going to be impermanent, dissatisfaction, impermanent and unsatisfactory at the same time, not so. That's the easiest way to practice Vipassana, because all the time we try to, our senses are trying to, process outside, objects. So if you start from senses, the senses themselves are anicca, dukkha, anatta. Then what about the others? So then that's the correct way to practice Vipassana. And then what happens? Evaṁ passaṁ rāhula sutavā ariyasāvako chakkusmimpi nibbindati, sotasmimpi nibbindati, gānasmimpi nibbindati, jivhāyapi nibbindati, kāyasmimpi nibbindati, manasmimpi nibbindati, nibbidaṁ virajjati, virāgā vimucchati, vimuttasmiñ vimuttamīti ñānaṁ hoti, kīnā jāti vusitāṁ brahmacaryaṁ kataṁ karaniyaṁ nāparang ittattāyāti pajanāti. Now, this is very interesting. When you practice Vipassana this way, by starting from your senses to be anicca, dukkha, anatta, and objects to be anicca, anatta, then what happens? Then you are going to be a Sutava Arya Savako. And we talked about this word last week too. There are two people in the spiritual path, right? Asutava Putujjano and then Sutava Arya Savako. So people who haven't decided to practice, Vipassana, in this case, they are Asutava Putujjano. That means they are unlearned Pratagjanas, we call wordlings. But the person who's already started, at least going to start, they're going to be learned noble disciples, you call Sutava Arya Savako, learned Arya Savako. Now, when this particular person who is going to practice Vipassana this way, starting from thinking that my senses are themselves anicca, dukkha, anatta, and the rest, especially the sense objects, are also anicca, dukkha, anatta, then what happens? This particular person is going to be a learned noble disciple, Arya Savaka. Seeing this, a learned noble disciple grows disillusion with the eye. So then, eyes can't, eyes can, you know, disillusion, you know, especially eyes can take that person to illusion, right? So also the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, right? So he, she is very protected because there's no more delusion that comes from these senses after. Being disillusioned, desire fades away. When desire fades away, they are freed. When they are freed, they know they are free, right? So then what happens is that they also understand rebirth is ended. So this is kind of the ultimate goal. Rebirth is ended. When you practice Vipassana, then you definitely attain the main wisdom called Nibbana, and then your rebirth, samsara, is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. Now, if you can take a look at your spiritual journey, it's not yet completed. So you need to complete. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. Now, this is the sutta. So, I also want to share with you few other suttas in short, which follow after this sutta, because they are related to this sutta. This is called Cakkhu Sutta, as I told you. This is 18.1 sutta, which is mentioned in Rahula Sangata. Buddha has shared a couple of suttas with regard to Venerable Rahula in practicing Vipassana. And then Buddha gave another sutta called Rupadi Sutta, where Buddha talks about all the objects are anicca dukkha anatta. That is another way you can practice Vipassana. So one way is you can practice senses to be anicca dukkha anatta, and then in the Rupadi Sutta, next sutta, you can practice all the objects to be anicca dukkha anatta. And then following that sutta is Vijnana Sutta. In that, Buddha says all the vijnanas, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, they all are to be taken as anicca dukkha anatta. So that's another way to practice Vipassana. And then following that sutta, subsequent to that sutta, there is another one called Sampassa Sutta, wherein Buddha gives another way of practicing Vipassana called Sampassa. Cakkhu Sampassa, sense contacts. All the sense contacts. That means eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. They all are to be taken as anicca dukkha anatta. And also Buddha talks about, in a subsequent sutta, Vedana. So all the feelings have to be taken as anicca dukkha anatta. That is another way of practicing Vipassana. And also in the Sanya Sutta, which is subsequent to that sutta, Buddha says, all the sanyas, perceptions, that means rupa, saddha, gandha, rasa, pottabha, dhamma, they all are to be taken as anicca dukkha anatta. So perceptions which call rupa perception, and then saddha, gandha, rasa, pottabha, dhamma, they all can be taken as perceptions too, not just as objects. So this way, Buddha taught us different ways to practice Vipassana. There is no one way. So you could take, depending on the time, your senses and objects and consciousness types, and also sense contact. So use any of these situations to practice Vipassana. What you need is that you need to make sure that you're practicing Vipassana at different times based on what comes up at different times. So that's today's sutta, wherein I talked about how to practice Vipassana in less than 5 minutes. So if you know how to practice Vipassana by using anicca dukkha anatta into any nature where you have to think senses, sense objects, consciousness types, perceptions, sense contacts, you could easily practice Vipassana. So this is the early Buddhist analysis about Vipassana, but if you can see the new Vipassana movement, they are kind of blending samatha practice, I would say jhanic practice, with Vipassana. But this is the original sutta practice about Vipassana. Okay, if you have any more questions, I can reply to you now. If there are no questions, I could close the sutta discussion. Okay, so let's close the sutta discussion by sharing good karmas with the departed relatives and the deities. May all the good karmas that we've been accumulating so far be shared by all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idam me ñāti nang hotu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idam me ñāti nang hotu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idam me ñāti nang hotu sukita huntu ñātayo. It's customary to share good karmas with the deities and nagas who protect all of us. May all the nagas and deities, devas, share in all these good karmas. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, as well as may they protect all of us for all the good things, especially wholesome purposes in your life. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ittavata cha ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu, sabbe bhuta anumodantu, sabbe satta anumodantu, sabba sampatti sindhya, akasattha ch bummattha deva naga mahindika, punyantang anumoditva, chirang rakkhantu lokasasanang, chirang rakkhantu desanang, chirang rakkhantu mang paranti. Finally, let's make a great wish. May all the good karmas we've been sharing, we've been accumulating in all these ways, especially by listening and discussing a great Pali Suttas about original concept of Vipassana today, be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm gonna bless you with a couple more stanzas. Abhivadana silisse nichang vaddha pachayino chattaru dhamma vaddhanti ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sangha sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminati saminjatu. This Wednesday, we're going to be having the discussion with Professor in Sinhala medium, because we've been planning to have a Sinhala discussion about the topic we had last Wednesday. It's about how, what is it that prevents, for not living up to, the full potential. So we're going to be discussing this in Sinhala. Because the professor and I were talking about to do it in Sinhala. And then we have one more discussion after this Wednesday. It's going to be an interview about his life. So he's going to be sharing his life and how it was started, and then especially academic life and his personal life and his contribution. So all that. So please stay tuned for that discussion. I would say it's an interview, not this Wednesday, the next Wednesday. Okay, have a good night. Take care.